There is a gold coin in the British Museum. It calls its owner Sultan, Queen of the Muslims. It was struck by a woman who had been bought and sold as a slave, the only woman ever crowned to rule Egypt. But history kept a different souvenir. Not the crown. The slippers, the wooden bath-clogs the palace women used to beat her to death. It kept the shoes, and it melted the crown down.
Femme-fatale histories. The women history called wicked, and what they actually did. Tonight, Shajar al-Durr, Tree of Pearls, the slave girl who broke a crusade, crowned herself Sultan of Egypt, and was murdered for it with a pair of wooden shoes.
Egypt, the middle of the 1200s. The richest crown in the Muslim world and the most dangerous chair to sit in. For 80 years it had belonged to the House of Saladin, but the dynasty was rotting from the inside, and everyone with a sword knew it.
So the throne's up for grabs.
It was about to be. The men who guarded the Sultan were not his subjects, they were his property. Mamluks, boys bought as slaves on the steppe, trained into the finest cavalry on earth, then freed into an army that owed the throne nothing but its pay. A kingdom defended by slaves is one bad day away from being ruled by them.
And into that, you drop a crusade.
You drop the largest crusade in a generation. King Louis IX of France, pious, stubborn, certain God wanted him in Egypt, was sailing for the Nile to take Cairo and cut the heart out of Islam. The Sultan who had to stop him was dying. And the person who would hold Egypt together was not a general, and not a prince.
Let me guess.
A woman who, 20 years earlier, had been a line item on a slave merchant's inventory. Nobody wrote down where she was born, the chronicles can't agree if she was Turkic, Armenian, or from the Caucasus. A slave girl's origins weren't worth the ink. They would spend 300 years making up the difference. She enters the record the way slaves do, as a purchase. Sometime in the 1230s, a young woman is bought for the household of an Ayyubid prince, Al-Soleh Ayyub. We don't know her birth name. The court gave her a new one, the way you name a jewel, Shajar al-Durr. Tree of Pearls.
Named for pearls. Because
pearls were what you draped on something precious, not, whatever the later romances say, for the color of her skin. That's a fantasy invented centuries after anyone had seen her face. What the sources actually say is thin, and repeated, beautiful, and clever. Especially clever.
That's it? For the most famous woman in Egyptian history?
That's it. And hold on to that, we will reach the end of her life never once told what she looked like. She was clever enough to become the one companion Al-Soleh could not do without. When a rival threw him in a desert prison, she went into the cell with him. When he climbed out and seized the throne, she rose with him. She bore him a son, Khalil, and for that he did the rare thing. He freed her, and married her.
So she's a queen now.
The boy died as an infant. But the title it gave her, Mother of Khalil, she kept for the rest of her life. It was the one thing standing between her and being property again. She never let it go. June, 1249. King Louis lands at Damietta, on the mouth of the Nile, and takes it almost without a fight. The crusade is real, enormous, and winning. And Al-Soleh, the Sultan of Egypt, is dying in his tent.
The worst possible moment.
The worst possible moment. He hangs on long enough to move the army south to Al-Mansura, the fortress blocking the road to Cairo. And there, in November, with his whole state balanced on his heartbeat, he dies.
And nobody's supposed to know.
Nobody can know. An army that learns its sultan is dead, with no heir in the country, doesn't fight, it scatters, and Cairo falls by Christmas. So Shajar al-Durr does something audacious. She hides the death of the king of Egypt. In the middle of a war.
How do you hide a body in a war camp?
You keep the tent shut and say he is too ill for visitors. You carry meals in, and carry them out empty. You let his most trusted commander run the fighting. And you issue orders in his name. Some say she forged the signature, some say he left blank sheets already sealed. For weeks, the Sultan of Egypt is a dead man in a locked tent, and a woman deciding what he would have wanted.
Does it work?
Watch the map. Held together just long enough, the Mamluks let the French push up the river, then cut the Crusader vanguard to pieces at Mansoura. Louis's own brother is killed. The invasion stalls, breaks, and runs. In April, the King of France is taken alive, the greatest prize of the age, and ransomed for a fortune, and the surrender of Damietta. The crusade that was going to end Islam ends in an Egyptian cell. And the woman who held the line has, this whole time, officially been in charge of nothing at all. The dead Sultan's son, Turan Shah, finally arrives and makes the classic mistake. He threatens the Mamluks who just won his war, and insults his father's widow. Within weeks they cut him down. He runs into a wooden tower by the river, they set it alight, he stumbles out burning and is speared into the Nile. The house of Saladin is finished. And the throne of Egypt is simply empty.
So who's left standing?
The commanders meet, and they make a choice with no precedent in the history of Islam. They put the slave-born widow on the throne itself. Not regent. Not guardian. Sultan.
They can just do that?
They do it. And here's how you know it was real, not a courtesy. They struck coins, and a coin is a receipt. Gold, minted in Cairo, calling her Queen of the Muslims, and the word it uses for her rule is Sultan. The masculine. They put her name in the Friday prayer in every mosque in Egypt, the loudest statement a medieval state could make about who holds power. For 80 days, a woman who had been a slave was sovereign of the richest country in Islam, in her own name, on her own coin.
80 days. So something breaks.
Baghdad breaks it. She needed the blessing of the Caliph, spiritual head of Sunni Islam, and he sent back one of the most contemptuous sentences a ruler has ever received. If you have run out of men in Egypt, he wrote, let us know, and we will send you one.
Ouch.
So the Mamluks find a compromise that saves face. She marries the toughest commander among them, a man called Aybak, and hands him the title. On paper, a man is Sultan again. Off paper, everyone in Cairo knows whose hand is on the strings. She made a sultan, the way her husband had once made her a queen. She was about to learn what that costs. For 7 years it holds. She rules through Aybak, and Aybak lets her, because he is a soldier and she is a state. She builds a mausoleum for Al-Soleh that still stands in Cairo, and beside it, a tomb for herself. Even now, she is preparing how she will be remembered.
And they're happy? In a business arrangement sort of way?
In a business arrangement sort of way. Until Aybak decides the business no longer needs her. In 1257 he moves to take a second wife, a princess of Mosul, a real dynastic marriage, the kind that would make Shajar al-Durr surplus. The woman who had made him sultan read it exactly. She was being retired.
The man she'd handed the throne to.
The man she'd handed the throne to. So she struck first. She invited Aybak to the baths in the citadel, and there, servants of hers killed him. Whether she gave the order with her own mouth, the sources argue to this day. But she had the motive, and she was the one who paid.
How?
Aybak's faction, his teenage son, and the Mamluks loyal to him, took the citadel and seized her. And what happened next is why we remember her death instead of her reign. They handed her to the women of the harem, the wives and slaves of the man she had just killed. And those women beat her to death with their kapkab, the heavy wooden clogs they wore on the wet floor of the bathhouse.
Beaten to death with bath shoes.
Beaten to death with bath shoes. Her body was thrown from the citadel wall into the moat and left there, stripped, for days, before anyone was allowed to bury her. She had been queen of the Muslims. She died a corpse in a ditch, killed with footwear, by other women. It is one of the ugliest deaths in medieval history, and it was designed to be not an execution, a message about what a woman who reaches too high is allowed to become.
God.
They buried her, in the end, in the tomb she had built for herself. She had planned everything. Except the shoes. So let's do the arithmetic on the femme-fatale. The woman you just met, the strategist who saved Egypt and then ruled it, is not the woman the story kept. The story kept a monster, a scheming slave who seduced her way onto a throne and murdered the men in her bed. Where does that version come from?
Let me guess. Men with pens.
Men with pens, across 300 years, each worse than the last. Ibn Wasil, who actually lived through it, respected her, and even he called her a jealous, overbearing Turk who chose to kill her husband. That is the friendly version. 200 years on, al-Makrizi adds the clogs, the harem women, the naked body in the moat. A century later, Ibn Ayyas makes it worse. And on the street, in the folk epics, she is a poisoner and a witch.
So the shoes might not even be real?
The shoes turn up in the record 200 years after she is dead. The men who watched her die just wrote that she was killed. Everything else, the clogs, the harem, the days in the moat, is the story getting crueler in the retelling, because a woman who outruled every man around her makes people want a punishment to fit the crime of having been her. Here is the split. She held no throne by seduction. She held it with a coin, a prayer, and a war she won. But she is not remembered as the sultan who broke a crusade. She is remembered as the woman they killed with a shoe. So who was she, once the monster is stripped away? A builder. She left Cairo more beautiful than she found it. The mausoleum she raised for her husband is a masterpiece of Islamic art, and the prayer niche inside it carries, in glass and mother of pearl, a tree hung with pearls. Her own name, written in light on a wall, by her own command.
She signed it. With the pun on her own name.
She signed it. And it is the closest thing to a self-portrait she left, because there is no other. We have reached the end of her life, and I still cannot tell you what she looked like. No portrait was ever made. No chronicler described her face. Islamic coins bear words, not faces. The most powerful woman in the medieval Muslim world is, to us, faceless.
So every picture of her is a guess.
Every picture of her is a guess, including everyone in this film. The portraits you'll find online are European fantasies painted 600 years after she died. We genuinely do not know her face. But we know her hand because she left one thing with her name pressed into it, hard, in gold. This. A dinar, struck in Cairo, in the year 1250. Only a couple survive. On it, a woman born a slave calls herself Queen of the Muslims, and takes for her rule the word Sultan. No face. Just the claim, in metal, that outlasted every man who tried to erase it. History kept the shoes. She left the coin. She is not the only one. Wherever a woman got close enough to power to be blamed for it, someone wrote her a monstrous version, and the pen almost always belonged to a man who lost to her, or answered to the men who did. In Egypt itself, 25 centuries before Shajar, Hatshepsut ruled as pharaoh in her own right, and ruled well. After she died, her successor had her name and her face chiseled off the temple walls, one by one, as though she had never reigned at all. On the steppes east of the Caspian Sea, the nomad queen Tomaris led her people against Cyrus the Great of Persia and destroyed him. Almost everything we know of her was written by the Greeks, the outsiders who feared her. She survives only in the words of men who were never on her side. In Korea, Queen Sindik ruled the kingdom of Silla, built its great stone observatory, and outmaneuvered her enemies. Centuries later, Confucian historians who could not abide a woman on the throne wrote her reign up as proof that the kingdom had fallen into disorder. And high in the mountains of Kashmir, Dida held power for nearly 50 years. The chronicles turned that long, shrewd reign into the tale of a lustful, murderous witch, because a woman who kept power that long could only be a monster. Different centuries. Different continents. The same pen. And Shajar al-Durr's version worked so well that for 700 years the coin sat in a drawer, and the shoes stayed in the story. A slave who broke a crusade and crowned herself, handed down to us as a jealous wife who got what was coming to her. She held the richest throne in Islam in her own name. She has no face we can find, and no grave anyone visits. What she has is a small gold coin in a museum drawer, with a single sentence stamped on it in the hand of a woman who refused to disappear, Queen of the Muslims. Ruler. Her word, Sultan.
Shajar al-Durr won a war that could have ended her religion, and ruled the country that won it, and the thing we kept was a story about shoes. She spent her last years building a tomb so she would be remembered, and she was, just never for anything she chose. Next time on Femme-Fatale Histories, another woman history called Wicked. Until then, when a woman is remembered only for how she died, ask who was standing over her, holding the pen. Tell me below, was Shajar al-Durr a murderer, or simply the best ruler in that citadel, and the only one they were allowed to punish?